Hello and welcome to another episode of Graham Hughes' PUBCAST. Although this should be called the Not in the Pub cast, because we're not in the pub, because that's a terrible, terrible, terrible idea. Today I am joined by Ben Chambers.
Hello everybody.
How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing okay here in Norfolk. It's not as hot as it has been, but it's passable. Nice Everton cushion down there, matey. Nice Everton cushion.
Thank you. Thank you. You just won the league, I think. I don't pay attention.
Yeah, what a complete coincidence that just happened to be there. Yeah.
And wonderfully enough, we're also joined today by Robin Tudge. Yes!
Hi,
Robin.
Hi, how's it going?
We're very good. Now, Robin, we've brought you along today because we want to have a drink with you. But you can't drink today, can you? That is zero alcohol Peroni.
Yes, it's AF and it's extremely nice. Basically, for me, it's a school night. I'm starting work on the ambulance tomorrow at about 6:15. So I'll be up at 4 and traipsing over to the other side of town, and then we'll be spending all day picking up people who are getting pissed out of their heads in the pubs. It should be fun.
Oh my God. Okay, so let's talk about this for a moment. We're going to come on to the pub thing, but let's just talk about it. So, Robin, you work in the NHS.
Yes.
How's the last few months been?
I'm on ambulances. I've been doing it for a couple of years, and obviously we're still coming through the we're still sort of playing out through the plague, and it's been an interesting time. We had a lot of help from the fire brigade. They've proven wonderful. They sort of know how to sit around a lot. We actually haven't been. Initially we were wholly overloaded, and then we started bringing in hundreds of other vehicles, and also fire brigade crews started helping out, and the AA even. I mean, it's been wonderful, the support we've had. And actually the workload dropped down a lot because a lot of people, we see this in A&E, loads of people haven't been coming to hospital because they're terrified of getting COVID. Quite, fair enough. But a lot of them, on the other hand, and also a lot of people who normally we wouldn't consider time wasters, but we're thinking, you don't need an ambulance for that, aren't calling us for the same reason. On the other hand, we also come to patients who are actually genuinely seriously ill. And we say, well, why didn't you call us? And they're going, well, I knew you were busy, or, I actually didn't want, I thought the risks were of going into hospital and getting plague were kind of too high. And it's like, mate, you're having a heart attack, you should have fucking called us. So it sort of cuts both ways.
Wow.
But it's certainly been interesting.
So what have the fire brigade and the AA been doing? They've been picking people up and taking them to hospital.
Yeah. I mean, they've just been wonderful in terms of keeping all the vehicles on the road, because we've had to kind of get out of storage a lot of older buses and bring in new vehicles, and it's just the absolute need to keep all of the fleet absolutely on road. And the fire brigade have been helping with driving, and also some basic life support stuff. And also we've drawn in drivers from NETS, which is the non-emergency transport service, who clinically are kind of very low skilled, but in terms of their ability to drive, that's what we need them for. So it's really been all hands on deck. But yeah, like I say, so we've not actually, in terms of the extra resources that have been applied, it means our actual workload per shift has gone down quite a lot. But also now things are opening up again. It's much more back in the normal. The number of jobs we are getting is going right back up. All the old people are beginning to fall over again. That was strange. They stopped falling over and we couldn't work out why. And the number of actual COVID cases...
Well, because they were dying, Robin. They were dying in the tens of thousands. That is death of a toll of over 65,000 people, whereas Japan, which has twice our population, has an excess death rate of 0.
No, this is true. I mean, the Tories and their strategy or lack of. I mean, basically, we ended up with a sort of quasi-form of herd immunity that Dominic Cummings sought all along, arguably. And yeah, we are truly leading Europe and the world in terms of death rate and absolute numbers. I mean, it's quite staggering. We sort of see this in sort of subtle ways, like one of the hospitals we go to normally where it's specifically for end-of-life care patients. And so it's very serene. There's no sort of sense of emergency or drama. It's just people who are kind of seeing out their last few weeks or months. And that we were told that we couldn't go there anymore, even to pick patients up, because it was bodies out the door. And there was another one where quite a major hospital we go to the A&E department quite a lot, and round in the back of the car park there was a building work going on, an extension, and you think, well, building work goes on, and it's an extension. And then it said, yeah, that's for the morgue. they're having to, you know, really sort of ramp up the capacity. And this isn't sort of broadcast. These are just the little details you pick up here and there. So yes, it's been interesting.
In terms
we've had a few.
Sorry, I was just thinking in terms of things that aren't broadcast. It's phenomenal how at the moment, just 2 days ago, the death toll, the published, which is the lower estimate death toll in the UK, was 176. I think that was Tuesday's figure. On the same day, the entire EU 27's death toll published was 105. Now that means we're talking, you know, a good 60 odd more people who died in the UK on Tuesday, or the 24 hours before, than in the entire EU 27 put together. That would have been news 2-3 months ago. The fact that it doesn't get a mention anywhere, and I have to research those figures because I can't find them anywhere and total them all up. And then people retweet it because it's, oh my God, is that true? Really? Still that's going on? You know, we're unlocking the pubs and we're making them available at 6 o'clock in the morning. If you need a pint before breakfast tomorrow, you can get one. And at the same time, the messaging from the government is be responsible. Let's do this in incremental stages. But coupled with that, if you really can't wait until breakfast for your first pint, get down Wetherspoons, because if they've got a license that allows them to open at 6 in the morning, you can get one. And you know, you've got to remember that when Boris Johnson says use your common sense, we already know that half the population have zero common sense, and he's talking to those people and expecting them to demonstrate common sense that he knows they haven't got because they voted for him. So it's such a mess. And we've talked before about the colorization of the stay alert, to control the virus messaging being green, which is go. Everything the government's doing now is saying, just like we got Brexit done, we got COVID done. It's sorted. Back to normal. Get in the pub, get in the restaurants. You know, okay, you can't go to a nail bar or the theatre just yet, but that's coming. Don't worry too much. Fly to any country you like. And if you have to go via Bulgaria to get to Greece, fine. Dad did it. That's all good. And you've got Grant Shapps this morning defending Boris Johnson's father for his trip to Greece. So it's not that I think things aren't being talked about in the media. It's the way they're being talked about, which is the normalization of this crisis and the normalization of the one rule for us, one rule for another, that really gets me, because we're buying into it. We're being suckered into this as a public, and people are saying, yeah, okay, I get Boris Johnson's father did that, but he's Boris Johnson's father. He's Stanley Johnson. He's loaded. He's got a mountaintop villa and he's COVID-proof. I can kind of forgive that. No, you can't. And then the government know they've got away with the Cummings scandal. They know that that's now a month ago. Everyone's forgotten about it. We've let that one go. They're doing the same with the Russia report. So all these things that we really need to be hammering on about, and as Mike Galsworthy would say, going hard on at the moment, not letting up on, I think needs a little bit more now than signing the odd petition, which will be ignored, writing to your MP, which will be ignored. And you've got Steve Bray at the moment actively calling for far more direct action on Twitter, and he's 100% right. If we continue to do nothing, which equates with petitions and writing to your MP, we will be in this position in 6 months' time, in 4 years' time. I genuinely am not hyperbolizing, if that's even a word. I dread to think where we're going to be in 4 years' time, because they've had 6 months since Johnson came to power with the electorate behind him, effectively in December. He's had 6 months to do this much damage. Where are we going to be in 2024? It really doesn't bear thinking about.
I take it you're not going to the pub tomorrow, Ben?
Well, do you know what? My local pub doesn't open at 6, so I won't be able to get my pre-breakfast pint. But no, I'm not. I'm genuinely not. And it's not a pious thing. It's not a sanctimonious thing. If I want to drink, I can drink at home. I can drink with one other household. I can have a socially distanced bubble bath now with one other household, whatever it is. God knows. But I'm not going to Wetherspoons. I'm not even going to the nice local pub that's just over the road that could really do with my support. Because quite frankly, why would I? Why would I need to? What's the point? And it's Saturday. It's Super Spreader Saturday. It's July the 4th. It's Independence Day. What a day to make such a momentous...
I'm a little bit torn. Well, first of all, can we just mention July the 4th? July the 4th is the date that the British were defeated by the Americans. They kicked us out of their country. So let's celebrate that. Let's celebrate that massive defeat for our nation. By going to the pub. And like, of all the people I know, I'm the most likely to be like, hey, let's go to the pub. I mean, I've been to 15 Glastonburys, I've been to every country in the world, I got drunk in every one of them pretty much, even Saudi Arabia. like I do a podcast called PUBCAST, for fuck's sake. If there's anyone who would be like chomping at the bit to get out of the house and go to the pub, it would be me. Yeah. But I am so disgusted with the way that the government have dealt with the COVID crisis that has overwhelmed this nation. And they're just, there's this blithe cruelty of shipping old people off from the hospitals back to the nursing homes to die. And now there's 65,000 excess deaths in this country. And they can't walk away from that. They can't pretend that didn't happen. They can't pretend they weren't responsible. And the scary thing is, Ben, Robin, the scary thing is that today I saw a poll. It was Robert Peston or something. It was on ITV. It was reported in the New European newspaper. And it showed that only 33% of the respondents blamed the government for what's happened.
I saw that, yeah.
Do you know who they're blaming? The people. The people who have not had leadership. The people who have not been told what to do. The people who have been told to trust their own judgment and use their common sense. The same common sense that would have had you wake up on the 17th floor of the Grenfell Tower in the middle of the night and think, I'm not going to do what the fire brigade tell me to do. That same common sense.
Yeah. Jacob Rees-Mogg. I mean, and I remember that was extraordinary, and yet he got away with it. Yet he was re-elected. Yet they're all re-elected, and we're saying, for Christ's sakes, if you re-elect these people, what do you think? How is it going to be? And so it's panned out. What a way to prove it. It's absolutely hideous. And the thing is, Graham, it's interesting because, I mean, your anger is perfectly right. I'm as angry as you for those reasons. And a lot of people are also, I get this sense as lockdown has eased and there's a hell of a lot of frustration. It's only going to get worse. And people are really pent up. And I can't think of a worse place to be than in a pub when there's suddenly everybody's out and they're actually losing control because they just want to be free and liberate. But there's a rage. But the rage is not about this situation of 65,000 dead. The rage isn't about, what the hell are we doing under the aegis of this grotesquely, murderously incompetent government at best, if you want to call it incompetence. The anger is directed at all these other things, and you think, this relates to what Ben was saying about. It's just not being talked about. It's just not being sort of reported. It's all these distractions, and people are raging about, in effect, the wrong stuff. But they're all going to go to the pub, get absolutely smashed, and beat the crap out of each other. And the ones who are left standing are still going to catch the plague off one another. And, the blame will be befallen upon them all, and not the people in number 10 and 55 Tufton Street who've helped arrange all this.
And do you know what, Robin, you said something interesting there. You said, call it incompetence. And I think we risk slipping into this trap of doing just that, because I don't think it is. And it is incompetence. Yes, of course, there's incompetence, there's ineptness. There's all levels of people in power who, as Michael Spicer has pointed out, should not have risen above the level of a branch manager of TK Maxx or Co's Beauty World. I mean, Matt Hancock being a great example. But it's not primarily incompetence, and that's what we need to remember here. These were planned decisions. I mean,
that's where you could.
These were strategic planned decisions that people like Boris Johnson made, covered up by this mask of bumbling incompetence, which in his eyes, and I think a lot of the public's eyes, enables us to say, okay, we know the government have made lots of mistakes in the handling of the COVID-19 crisis, just like they have with Brexit, but they're learning, it's on the job, there'll be an inquiry, they'll get things better.
Who could have seen this coming?
For goodness sake, next time we won't kill 65, 70,000 people. No, these are strategic planned things, and people need to be told, because they don't understand, that in February, Boris Johnson made a conscious decision to put the economy before the health of the nation, so we could emerge, this was his intention, from this crisis as a Superman amongst our European peers. We'd have the only economy that was still thriving when they were picking up the pieces because they'd locked down. His intention was never to lock down, never to put public health first. And on the day that he was told by Sage to tell people explicitly not to shake hands, he told them the very opposite thing. I've been shaking hands with as many COVID-19 patients as I could find. You'll be pleased to know. 2 days later, he tells Phil and Holly the same thing. The plan is to let the disease move through society, herd immunity. And then even on the 16th of March, a a week before he changes his mind, when he's told 500,000 people could die, he's telling people that there's no scientific evidence that banning mass gatherings will make the slightest bit of difference. Those weren't gaffes. They weren't Boris blunders. They weren't mistakes. They were strategic decisions he made in the face of the advice he was given from people like Neil Ferguson, people like, who's the other guy? Edmonds. Is it John Edmonds? All these scientists who come out the woodwork now and said, I'd have preferred we locked down 2 weeks earlier. I want to know, if that's what you're saying now, John Edmonds and Neil Ferguson and everybody else, is that what you told government at the time and therefore they ignored? I want to know that, because at the moment, we're setting ourselves up, I think, and the government are for, yes, like you just said, Robin, blaming the public. It beggars belief that only 33% think this is the government's fault. Who are they asking?
Yeah, that's what bothered me.
Yeah, go on.
Ben, he put his jollies, he put his holidays in front of public health. He took his mistress's baby shower in front of public health. Boris Johnson was on the radio this morning, and I wish someone had called him up and said, congratulations on your newborn child. What number is that?
Yeah.
And just let it hang, because he can't answer that question because he doesn't know. His name isn't even Boris, it's Alexander. He is that much of a liar. But I just want to go back to Robin for a moment. Robin, you have been on the front line, literally at the NHS, being an ambulance driver and like taking these people into the hospitals. And you've seen the carnage that this government has done. Can you just talk us through what the last few months have been like for you?
Well, I mean, just surreal. I mean, because notwithstanding with the lockdown, we've been, some of the few people who actually as key workers were allowed out. I think the thing that really sort of bugged us was the level of PPE. I mean, even now we've got the quality of our PPE is extremely low. And it's the complexities of the job. I mean, we have like a 40-page document as to how to what we do when we come across a patient who we suspect may or may not have corona. And that we're now on version 9. I mean, it gets updated every other week. So it's incredibly dynamic and kind of frustrating and complex situation. That's just the sort of mechanics of it. And then we can go to an A&E and find that they've moved their entrance for the COVID patients around the back, or they've moved resus into the PEDS department. And this will change from the morning to the afternoon. So it's been incredibly complex. As sort of technicians, as paramedics and the rest, there's been a few people, one of whom I did know, who certainly in our service have died. In the NHS as a whole, I think the total figure for care workers and nurses and doctors is now over 200, who were there treating and doing their absolute level best, but unfortunately succumbed to the disease. And they're all ages, and they weren't people with other comorbidities. I mean, there's a lot to be said that a lot of the people that died of COVID, COVID came along and it was what killed them off, but other things were going on as well. But we know also that very young children can even die of it. I got it. I was laid up for a week, but
shit, I forgot that you put that on Facebook. You put that on Facebook that you had it.
Yeah, I mean, I put it with with the kind of macabre tone that we have to adopt in order to get through these things. I said, I've got plague.
What was it like? What was it like to have COVID?
For me, it wasn't that bad. I just in effect, I slept for a week. I got night sweats, and then I got tremors, and then I thought, right, that's it. And I phoned work, and they said, yeah, you better not come in. And we got the test done, and I was proven to have it. But after a week, I was no longer showing sort of symptoms. The symptoms they wanted were headache and high temperature. And I said, well, I haven't got those. And they said, right, you're fine, you're fit to come back to work. I wasn't retested as to whether or not I still had it, or my antibodies at that point. They just said, okay, you're not sort of presenting with the overarching symptoms.
You hadn't been, sorry, you worked for the NHS.
Yeah.
You were ill as fuck, and they didn't.
I was tested to show I had it, and that's what got me off work. But once the two main parameters of high temperature and a cough, so I said, after a week, I don't have a cough and I don't have a high temperature. And they said, okay, and you spent 7 days at least in isolation. You're okay to come back to work. And I wasn't.
But then you had COVID-19.
Yeah.
And you were dealing with people, the most vulnerable people in society, and you could still have had the disease.
Yeah, I was cleared to come back. I mean, with as much PPE as we have, this is it. Great. Yeah, it didn't make sense, but that's how they did it.
You don't have a shield? You don't have like a shield in front of your face or anything like that?
We do. We've got, there are particular circumstances, for example, if somebody's in cardiac arrest or and in which point they will need an advanced airway intervention. This is aerosol producing sort of situations where we'll be very up close to them and they'll be sort of in a sense emitting droplets quite violently, whereupon we do have quite Darth Vader masks, that's what we call them. But normal face-to-face contact, that's basically it. And rubber gloves and an apron that's like a ripped up polythene bag. It's like something hanging off the back of a bus stop. I mean, we're better at kind of indicating whether or not the patient, we're pre-warned whether or not the likelihood is the patient actually has COVID, but it can be incubated. You can be asymptomatic for a long time. In fact, you might not even develop it, but you could still be carrying it and give it to other people. And again, there are people who we've come to and we've said, well, you're actually really ill. We're going to have to take you to hospital. And they go, I don't want to go because I've got COVID, or I don't want to get it. And we're like, and we have to say, okay, the risks of you catching it now in hospital are kind of quite small because they're hot on it, but there is still that risk. Now, a colleague of mine who was on my training course, he's had it and he's had it very, very badly. I mean, he's had to have almost been put on a respirator. I avoided that, but yeah, it was. There's been a lot of anger amongst crews as to the levels of PPE that we've had compared with other services across Europe. I mean, they just seem much better equipped. I mean, I know the famous pictures of Italian doctors and nurses who are bruised from the face masks that they have to wear, but they had face masks to wear. I mean, we've got these. I don't know. It's like somebody took a sanitary towel and sort of ripped it up. I mean, it's shit. And you wear it for any length of time, it just starts slipping down your nose and you have to push it back up, but you're not supposed to touch your face. It's like, what the fuck do you want me to do with this?
Robin, when you say things like that, all that comes to my mind is Boris Johnson. I don't know when he said it, but it was in the last month. I take full responsibility for the government's handling of COVID-19, and I'm very proud of our record. Well, when he says things like that, I'm still struggling to understand whether he knows it's a lie, whether he genuinely doesn't and actually is proud of our record, or whether he's just hoping that people will just accept what he's saying and not give it a second thought. I can't get my head around that. Are we at a level now? So people are talking about slipping through the looking glass and we're in proper Alice in Wonderland territory. I'm wondering whether we are, or whether this is all part of a strategic plan just to... The Guardian did publish an article on this, whether or not the government know that they're lying. And that is part of the plan. That's part of Cummings' deliberate strategy to keep lying because it is working for the 50% of the population they need on side. They will believe it. And that, for me, that really worries. Yeah. What do you think?
I mean, if you can get 43% of voters out of a 70% turnout to deliver you an 80-seat majority, then that's it. That's all you need. And that's after 10 years of austerity and years, even then with post-referendum of lies, blatant lies, death threats, assassinations. But still, they can do it. And if your opponents, in effect, are keeling over out of sheer frustration and kind of boiling alive in their own anger, so much the fucking better, because all you have to do is watch them, in effect, blow themselves up. It's like, oh, this is great. This is win-win.
Yes, that's very true. I mean, I'm talking about opponents. I mean, the only actual opponent that Boris Johnson has to contend with meeting face-to-face is Keir Starmer every Wednesday when they sober him up for long enough to do PMQs. We used to notice that was the very same day, the only day he ever did a press briefing. Now he wants to do these regularly. In the style of Putin and perhaps Trump doing a press briefing with the lecterns and having a few people to flank him that give him some credibility. I'm still trying to formulate what his actual strategy is at the moment going forward. I know that Dominic Cummings plans to be there till about December, until Brexit is officially done, and then he'll vanish from the scene. But I'm like you just said, it's the electoral reform issue is such a big one because on such a small minority of the populace voting for them, they have an 80-seat majority. And every time someone tweets, how can this be allowed to happen? How do they think they can get away with this? Someone will inevitably respond with 80-seat majority. That's how they're doing it. They've got nothing to worry about. But going back to what you said about opposition, I'm thinking about Keir Starmer. He's getting a lot of mixed reviews at the moment. You can't fault what he's doing in Prime Minister's Questions. I'm just wondering whether he's doing enough, what you think he could be doing that he isn't doing. Because yes, of course, he roasts Boris Johnson every Wednesday. It's easy. You know, there are amoeba on Saturn that could do as good a job as Keir Starmer's doing. But what does he actually need to be doing that perhaps he isn't doing at the moment, he could be taking advantage of? Because this should be an open goal. It was for Corbyn for 4 years. It should be for Keir Starmer. Now, does he have to wait 4 years? Or is there something he can do in the interim period to speed this all up? Because, like I said, we can't afford to wait 4 years. We really can't.
Ben, in terms of what Keir Starmer's done, I mean, obviously, I'd like him to do a lot more about Brexit and making sure that something we haven't even touched on yet is the fact that the transition period is now locked in to end on December the 31st this year, which means that Britain's free trade agreements, now free trade agreements are like fucking gold dust. There are so few of them in the world. There are fuck all of these agreements. There just aren't that many, right? This is just the way the world is. And the ones that exist are not that great a quality in terms of, like, you know, CARICOM, the Caribbean community, or ECOWAS, the West African community. You're talking about economies where you have a GDP less than a small business in the United Kingdom. I mean, they are tiny in comparison with the world. So the IMF pretty much break down the world into two categories, one developing nations and the other one advanced economies. So there's 164 countries around the world, territories as well, which are regarded as developing. There's only 200 countries in the world, so that's over 3/4 of the world are seen by the IMF as developing. You've only got 35 or 36, if you include Taiwan, that are advanced economies. And of them, of the UN nations that are regarded as advanced economies, the EU is either comprises of or has free trade deals with, comprehensive free trade agreements, great quality agreements with all but 4.
Yeah.
All but 4. And each one of those agreements says in it, they can't give a better deal to anybody else without revisiting the deal they've got with the EU. Those, apart from Europe, those 4 countries that they've got deals with are Canada, which is only a population of 40 million. It's not that big. South Korea, which is, a decent sized economy. Singapore, which again isn't that big. And Japan. Japan is massive. Japan is twice the population of the United Kingdom and twice the economic clout of the United Kingdom. I mean, I'm recording this, if people are watching this, I'm recording it on a Sony device and I'm recording it on a laptop that was made in Japan as well. I mean, this is the thing, it's like they're huge. And so Britain has 6 months from now, because it has not a single decent, high quality, comprehensive free trade agreement with any other country in the world. It does because it's through the EU at the moment, but at the end of the year, that's it. We don't have any. And every single person I've spoken to about this, mad, bug-eyed Brexiteers going on, yes, it's going to be amazing. We're going to trade with the Himalayan Kingdom of Bhutan. They have an economic growth of 8%. And I'm like, are you mental? Like,
yeah, but Graham,
if someone has a potato today and 2 potatoes tomorrow, that's 100% growth. They've still only got 3 fucking potatoes.
Yeah, but Tim Tams, Graham, Tim Tams. You see, this is where we're at. Remember, Boris Johnson announced today that he's not a man of gestures, he's a man of substance. So, of course, Twitter and all social media has taken the opportunity today to tweet out every gesture this imbecile has put out into the Twitter sphere over the past 4 years, whether it's bashing through a brick wall saying Brexit in his digger, dangling from a zip wire, brandishing kippers at press conferences and Tim Tams. I mean, this guy is nothing but gestures with zero substance. And in reference to that interview today, Graham, exactly. But he also, it's interesting today, he's for the first time come out and said that actually, I think no deal could be the preferable option. And this is a man that said, I think in December last year, that no deal would be a failure of statescraft.
Yeah,
so
I mean, you're completely right. And obviously these podcasts are a little bit one-sided because obviously it's the side that's usually against the government.
Well, yeah, we're on the side of facts, Graham. Let's remember that. That's the side we're on.
That's what I was going to say.
Evidence
I'm
and facts.
on the side of geography, okay? I'm the guy who's been to every country in the world. If you want to try and one-up me on the geopolitical situation of this planet, I'm going to kick your ass. I'm sorry. Come at me. Just leave a message in the comments here and let's have a conversation on Zoom. And I will have a conversation with anyone who wants to tell me that my view of the way the world is, because I've seen it and I've been to all these places, is somehow corrupted or wrong. And the view of someone who has never left Stoke-on-Trent has a better idea of how the world works. We cannot do anything about facts. We can't do anything about the geography of the planet. We can't do anything about the economic situation in Africa and South America and the Caribbean and South Asia and East Asia and West Asia, for God's sake. I mean, there's so many places in the world. There's over 150 countries that need actually our support and our help. They don't really need our Land Rovers. They don't need our artisan jams. It just doesn't make any sense. We have a lot of countries nearby that have a lot of money that we can trade with, but we're throwing that all away because we're going to go set out to the rest of the world and we're going to have this amazing trade deal with all these other countries that's going to be better than the one that an economic superpower like the EU, which represents nearly 500 million people and has a GDP like, was it 6 or 7 times bigger than the UK already has, somehow. Yeah. And this to me is just like pressing, it's like typing in Del *** in the old days of computers.
What does that do?
It wiped everything on your hard drive.
Yeah, well, you know that we're heading for a COVID-encrusted no-deal Brexit in 6 months' time. And I think the question we've got to be asking is, what can we do about that? Because that's where we're going. And there isn't a single economic commentator that says that's a good thing. The only person saying it's now a good thing is Boris Johnson, who says it's now a preferable option, no deal.
There's nothing we can do about it, Ben, because they've got an 80-seat majority.
Exactly.
I was going to try and bring this back around to Robin, to talk about COVID, because like this is why I called you guys and said, listen, let's have a chat today, because we're not going to the pub. We're not going to. We could be going to the pub and having a big old jangle about Brexit and how terrible it's going to be for the United Kingdom, which it will be. But instead, we're not going to the pub. And so, Robin, why are you not going to the pub tomorrow?
Well, it'll be a school night for me, but also I can't think of a place I'd rather not be than in a sort of confined space, because obviously COVID is still very much out there. I'm still wondering, I'll wear a mask if I'm out in public. I'll keep the 2 meters distance, and being in a room full of people getting pissed out of their heads, and they will be getting drunk. This is one thing we've seen as the lockdown has eased and people are starting to come out. They're doing stupid things, and again, it's as if people have lost all common sense while they've been locked up, and they just are kind of exploding. And I can't think of a place I'd rather not be than in a pub tomorrow, to be honest. I mean, even even if there was no COVID to worry about, I just wouldn't want to go. I see nothing but carnage.
I think it is absolutely hilarious that Robin's like, I wouldn't go to the pub anyway. Is that because it's full of Brexiteers, or are you just getting old?
Well, no, I think. I mean, there's loads of overtime that's been put on this weekend for ambulances because we know it's just going to be fucking horrible. And there's only 2 pubs around me anyway. One is actually very nice, And
Yeah.
the other one is obviously, it was a Wetherspoons. I've been banned because I wrote Tim Martin's a fascist bastard on the wall.
Yes, you did.
But,
I saw that.
Yeah, I got done for that. That didn't go down very well at work.
Can I just say, Tim Martin dresses like Wurzel Gummidge, looks like Wurzel Gummidge. Boris Johnson also bit Wurzel Gummidge. You know, he scuffs up his hair and he has a scruffy suit. Jeremy Corbyn also liked to sort of dress down, and Dominic Cummings loves to wear hoodies and pretend to be, you know, a man of the people. Can I just point out that all 4 of those motherfuckers were privately educated?
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, Cummings dresses down to the extent
they're the
where
ones
his
saying,
bum's falling out.
the metropolitan elite. How dare you be all metropolitan and elite? And these people are the people who were born into such wealth that their parents could afford thousands and thousands of pounds a year to send them to a private school.
Yeah. Well, I actually went to the same school as Nigel Farage.
Oh, you were privately educated as well?
Yeah. So, no, but I mean, this is the thing. My argument always was, look, I mean, I know most of the people actually went to my school turned out to be perfectly nice. But there was an element of incredible, you know, post-imperial entitlement and sociopathy. You could see it, some of them just came that way, and because that's what they thought the school was about, and that's what they completely bought into. And I used to tell people, it's like, no, for God's sakes, whatever the merits, this is back before the referendum, I mean, whatever the merits of Brexit or not, you don't want anything that Nigel Farage is selling. He's an absolute crook and, you know, far-right scumbag. And I know that because I know the kind of people my school, you know, could produce. And he was one of the classic examples. In fact, I'm still very good friend. Sorry, go on.
You still a very good friend with Nigel Farage? What?
No, I'm still very good friends with the teacher who threw him out of the cricket club, or threw him off the cricket team because he wouldn't stop talking. And so Farage went and joined the golfers. And for me, golfers are, you know, they're basically the Antichrist. I mean, I think most of the problems in this country you'll find they start and finish in the golf club. All these guys in Fred Perry shirts and living in the houses with gravel drives and just drinking whiskey and going red-faced. I mean, it's just gammon. They're disgusting. But that's just me.
Well, I'm just going to give you a quick list here off the top of my head, honestly. Boris Johnson, Dominic Cummings, Michael Gove, David Cameron, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Matt Hancock, Amber Rudd, Steve Barclay, Rishi Sunak, Ben Wallace, Alex Sharma, Robert Buckland, Robert Jenrick, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, George Eustace, Brandon Lewis, Alistair Jack, Simon Hart, Baroness Evans, Amanda Milling, Suella Braverman, Nigel Farage, Aaron Banks, Andy Wigmore, Jeremy Corbyn, Seamus Milne, Andrew Murray, Andrew Fisher, Jenny Formby, John Landsman, Ian Lavery, Ed Davey, Layla Moran, Richard Branson, James Dyson, Tim fucking Martin, Scuffy Bugger, Andrew Marr, Laura Kunsberg, Piers Morgan, Simon Cowell, Nick Ferrari, James O'Brien, Nick Abbott, Rachel Johnson, the Prime Minister's sister, who has a radio show, Clive Bull, Matt Fry, Matt Stadlen, Ian Payne, Tom Swarbrick, Andrew Castle, Dido Harding, and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Ooh.
All privately educated, Robin.
Yeah, no.
We have an Eton disorder in this country.
I see what you did there.
I think Eton should be knocked down. I mean, that wouldn't really solve much, so they'd rebuild it. But
people who are privately educated, 7% of the population, 99% of the power. When it comes to politics and the media, it is absolutely 100% dominated by people who are privately educated.
Yeah, and even then, it goes back. It goes to the thing of the image of Boris, you know, and his bumblingness, and people buy into that, and his bumbling amateurism, you know, and the whole idea that we've had enough of experts. We don't want people who know what they're doing, and anybody could do anything. It's like, well, we can see now where, you know, what's the upshot of that is 65,000 dead, and this is on the way to, in 6 months' time, we're going to have an absolute economic Armageddon because they actually don't know how to draw up trade agreements. They've got no idea. I mean, we're going to be strutting onto the world stage, and people will just be laughing, if not crying, at the ineptitude, if that's what it is, of the government and all the toadies and their sponsors who come hurtling in trying to cash in on the disaster.
You come from the front line on the NHS. I mean, seriously, the front line. You drive a fucking ambulance. What do you make of the fact that people are blaming each other rather than the government in charge of telling people what to do?
It's sad, it's despairing, but it kind of underscores the efficacy, the effectiveness of the message. I mean, one thing or another, for all of the mixed messages and confusion and deliberate confusion that's been put out by this government. I mean, as well as people could say, well, they're the confused themselves. I mean, that could actually be true. They've actually managed to kind of liquidate their own ability to think. But the one thing they've managed to, the sort of the consistent theme, and this is exactly the same thing through Brexit as well, is like, well, if it does all go wrong, we'll just get everybody to blame somebody else, but not us. Yeah. And that's where they wholly succeed. Everything is always somebody else's fault, and it's never the government.
Robin, why do you think they're successful at that? I mean, it's like this thing. You're walking down the street and someone punches you in the face, and then someone from the other side of the street says, that wasn't them who did that. And you go, oh, okay then. And you're like, how could you not know who punched you in the face? How could you not know who did that? And what I'll go back to the NHS, because we went out as a token gesture, not that Boris Johnson does those kind of things. And we went out onto the front doorstep and we clapped for the NHS for 10 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, as someone working in the NHS in the height of the COVID massacre, which is probably what we should be calling it, how do you feel like the public have treated you compared with how they've treated the government? Because I feel like they've been very, very forgiving of the government, and perhaps not as forgiving people in the NHS and teachers. But
well, it's that. I mean, that'll be. I mean, through this crisis, they've been extremely sort of kind, and if you stop at the lights, people and there's somebody there, they can often turn to us and sort of give us a thumbs up or a little clap and a wave. And initially, the clapping was, I know colleagues who are actually genuinely moved by it. It then sort of began to ring somewhat hollow. And I always thought, well, great clap, but for fuck's sake, don't go out and support the government at the same time, because you cannot have a functioning NHS and vote for a Conservative government. I mean, these are two wholly mutually exclusive goals. They cannot coexist. The latter will destroy the former, and that's what it's always intended to do. But what will be interesting is when lockdown eases and we're no longer, and people believe that we're no longer sort of in this sort of plagued time, even though in reality it will still be there and we'll be waiting for a second spike. Yeah. Whether or not they start to get back into the old trend of, when we turn up, we're at full stretch, we turn up to a job after an hour and they'll be going, where the fuck have you been? Which is what we have had before, but it's never the majority, it's only a minority. But this whole sort of sense of attitude of entitlement, and I'm sick, goddammit, I pay my taxes, where the fuck have you been? And it'll be interesting to see as and when, and the extent to which that sort of resurfaces. So, I think we're in something, again, I suppose it's something more of a sort of Alice in Wonderland situation where we are sort of presented as heroes, but that'll wear off, and we're presented as heroes but don't deserve to be paid decently, and ultimately it'll be us that'll be to blame when we turn up 2 hours to a call because everybody else has been phoning us as well, because suddenly now everybody's going to be ill for no reason.
I watched I watched and listened to Boris Johnson on the radio this morning, and someone called in and said my mum died in COVID-19, and I couldn't be with her. I didn't see her for a month before she died, and like it really affects me because I'm thinking first of all about my mum, but also about me, you know, in a selfish kind of way. Like the last month of my life on this earth, to not be surrounded by the people who love me and the people who want to be with me.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anything worse. It's like that thing of somebody in a hospital and a hospice who's dying, and their relatives don't want to see them because it upsets them, the living, too much, and they don't really think about the person who's passing away. And the question was asked, why is it that I couldn't see my mum, but Dominic Cummings could see his mum? Why could your dad, Stanley Johnson, go on holiday to Greece? Why is it one rule for you guys and another for the rest of us? And it was horrible hearing, like, you know, we know it. I mean, like, everyone who's watching this podcast, they know it. But like, how cruel, how fucking cruel, how evil do you want to be? It's one thing blowing up a planet in Star Wars, but denying someone the chance to be with their mother as they pass away. I can't think of anything crueler. I can't think of anything. But then, you know, obviously not abiding by those own rules themselves because they're above the law.
Yeah. No, I mean, the rank hypocrisy of it. I mean, that was an absolute slap in the face. This is the thing. I mean, it's kind of it's clapping for us and then slapping for us. I mean, we knew, you know, that this will be it. This will be the catalyst. But people go, well, if Cummings can do it, I can fucking do it. And lo and behold, they are. When they have, that's not right. What do you want us to do?
I want you to rise up. I want everyone to rise up, and I'll be at the front of the vanguard. The vanguard's at the back. I'll be at the front of the charge, saying, "Let's stop these privately educated, mediocre wankholes who think that the law, the rules, common decency don't apply to them." And that's what I want to be. I want to be there saying, listen, we're sick of this. We're sick of this shit. We're sick of hearing the same old tunes, the same old bullshit. And yet Boris Johnson was on the radio this morning trotting out the same old lies. And there's 43% of the electorate who are like, "Wow, Boris, you're doing a great job." I mean, 65,700 dead British people, most of them from the greatest generation, the generation that fought in the fucking war. They're dead. And you've got people going, Boris did a great job. I would love to see a bad job. I'd love to see what they would constitute as a terrible handling of this crisis, when New Zealand had 22 deaths and Britain had 65,700.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just sort of, and we are truly leading the world, and yet our peers or our competitors are in terms of delivering unbelievable death tolls. We've got the United States, Russia's coming up fast, and we've got, I think, Brazil, and they're all run by far right, hard right governments. I mean, there's a correlation there.
It's almost as though they don't care about people.
No.
But here's the thing, Robin. If we had locked down on March the 1st, if the government had told people to wear face coverings, and they had told the people, like, given them really strict advice, they had given £100 fines for people who are not wearing masks when they went out and done it sensibly. And they had a month to prepare. Don't ever forget that. They had a month to prepare.
Yep.
We could have an excess death rate similar to Japan. Japan's excess death rate is 0. There are no new deaths in Japan compared with, sorry, not the new deaths. There are no excess deaths over the usual average that they expect this time of year. We have had 65,000 more deaths than we expect at this time of the year.
Yeah.
What do we do to get this message out, Robin? How you're in the NHS. The people have been putting rainbows in the windows. They've been clapping for you.
I know.
What do you do? What do you do to explain it to them?
But the other thing is, you can get people, and again, I think this is reflected in the whole sort of in the sort of Brexit ethos. We can do what we like, and I'll do what I like, even and I won't be told by anybody. I mean, to the point when I think quite early on in the lockdown, my wife had to do a visit went to Morrison's, and she was saying that the staff there were getting crap off shoppers all the time. People just refused to even do the 2-meter distancing. And one of the shelf stackers said to a bloke, actually, do you mind just sort of not standing quite so close? We've actually got rules here. We're trying to keep the distance. And he just said, "Oh, stand where I like." It's like, yeah, but I could have COVID, or you could have COVID. I mean, why? What possesses you? What are you proving by doing that? Apart from you're a sociopathic bellend. That's all you're proving. And the penalty for which might be you could die, or pass it on to other people, and they could die. And that's not actually an exaggeration. This is a fact. It's a very simple thing. But no, you won't be told what to do. So great. All right, we'll just have to live or die with that. And the other thing, Sodem's back on outside Parliament. I've only managed to go once because of my shift pattern, but I'm going again on Wednesday. I don't know if you can see that.
Welcome to Brexit's leper colony. Like it or not, I will be your guide.
Yeah.
You'll never leave. You'll never leave. Little League of Gentlemen reference there. Free pass to death. I like that, Robin. I should explain to the people watching that Robin is an active member of Sodom, which takes place outside Parliament every day that Parliament is sitting. Steve Bray is the most famous person in Sodom, but there's a good number of people who also chip in and go along and cause mayhem. And I don't know. I don't want people who are watching this to because they're on our side. They're on our side. We get a couple of trolls, but most people watching this will be Remainers. Robin, can we tell them what we did a few months ago at the
yes. Well, it was. I can't remember. There's a very particular Norwegian speciality that's it's not pickled herring or it's some kind of boiled herring, but I mean it's unbelievably putrid.
It's fermented. Yeah, fermented herring. Is it herring?
And it's fermented. It's almost like it's explosive, isn't it? You said you have to open the tins underwater because the liquid of this fermented herring will jet out.
It's called Sturstrumming, and it's the smelliest thing on earth. It smells like a cross between shit and dirty nappies and rotting flesh and
it's
fish.
Amazing, unbelievable. And Norwegians, they get drunk and they eat this stuff, don't they? It's kind of it's almost like a test of manhood.
It's a Norwegian thing. Yeah.
I mean, they do what they do, but the smell is immense. Anyway, so it's January 31st when finally, we did actually come to the point where we're going to leave the EU. Nigel Farage and his far-right friends, Richard Tyson, all those other dickheads, decided to go to Parliament Square and celebrate. And lo and behold, it was about 3,000 or 4,000 people. Graham and I managed to get several tins of, or Graham got sent to him several tins of this fermented fish. And
thanks, Kieran.
And we made some impromptu stink bombs and went and distributed amongst the crowd, and it was quite incredible. One of them actually went off in my hoodie, and I realised as I was walking around, because now it was on me and I could smell it, or they could smell it, and from yards away, these people were turning around and going, "What the fuck is? Oh my god, that's disgusting! It's a stink bomb, blah blah blah," and it made it. I couldn't actually infiltrate the crowd after a point because I thought I'm going to get caught because it was almost like sort of parting of the waves of Moses. But we managed to distribute a few, and no, it was amazingly effective.
What I love, Robert, is the fact that if you go to a lot of gigs and festivals like Reality, you always get those people in the crowd. There's not that many of them, but they've got their arms folded. And they're like, you're not getting past me. They're like the blockers in Lemmings, if you ever played the video game Lemmings. And like, they're there at every festival and every gig. But basically, they're people who have found their spot. And if you try and get past them, even if you try and get out of the crowd to go to the toilets, they get pissed off. They're like, how dare you walk past me? This was an entire crowd on Parliament Square of people like that. And so they were so proud and angry and arrogant that they were not going to move for anybody or any smell. So once all these stink bombs started going off in that crowd, and there must have been a few thousand people in that crowd who were standing there going, "Oh my God, this fucking stinks." But they just
I can't move, I'm not going to move.
They just stayed there anyway. But Robin, thank you so much for joining me. Not going to the pub.
Yes, don't go to the pub. So I won't see you in the pub anytime soon. I'll see you here. And
yes.
Thanks, Ben.
Goodbye.
Fantastic. Lovely speaking with you, and don't go to the pub this weekend.
We're not going to the pub because we don't want to give people COVID-19, which is the most deadly pandemic in 100 years.
Yeah. There you go. Pint of Corona, please, barman.
It's not that complicated. Don't go to the pub.